Hello and welcome to part 2 of the Tinker's Construct mod spotlight. In this spotlight we will be looking at the modifications and how to make weapons and my favorite variety of weapons and their components. So to start off we will go and grab the Tinker's book, which explains it all very well. There we go. In the Tinker's book, it tells you what the various weapons do, but when you scroll to the end, it will tell you what the modifiers are and what they do. For example, the diamond does 500 extra durability and increases the tool's mining level to 3. It won't raise it past 3 if it's already past 3. 3, just so you guys know, is obsidian. Emerald will increase the tool's durability by 50% and will increase it to level 2, which is iron. Next up we have redstone, which increases the mining speed. It is useless on weapons. Then we have moss, which will repair tools slowly over time. Next up we have the auto smelt, which will auto smelt ores into ingots. This works with the enchantment luck, meaning if you mine an iron ore with luck 3 in auto smelt, you have a chance to get 3 iron ingots. Next up we have luck, which is used with lapis lazuli, and lapis luck is essentially fortune. Next up we have quartz. Quartz adds sharpness, which increases a weapon's damage. Then we have fiery, which is created by adding blaze powder. Every 5 blaze powder adds a second to the flame duration. Necrotic is added by necrotic bone, which drops from wither skeletons. Each necrotic bone that you add adds 1 heart of lifesteal for a single modifier. Next up we have silky, which adds silk touch. Next we have reinforced, which is used with an obsidian plate. This adds 1 thing of reinforced or unbreaking to your tool. I personally dislike this because I believe it is a waste of a modifier. Next up we have knockback, which is made with a piston. This increases the knockback that a mob is thrown, such as the knockback enchantment in vanilla Minecraft. Next up we have the beheading enchantment, which is obsidian and a ender pearl. The beheading enchant causes mobs to have a chance to drop their head. Each rank of beheading grants 10% chance to behead. Next we have bane of arthropods, which is exactly the same as bane of arthropods in vanilla, and that is made with a fermented spider eye. Next we have consecrated soil, which adds smite, which deals bonus damage to undead, and that is made with consecrated soil. Next, if you have thermal expansion installed, you can add either a hardened capacitor or a leadstone cell to the tool, and it will use RF instead of durability until the RF is depleted from the tool. To add modifiers, you can add 1 modifier with a diamond and gold block, a notch apple and a diamond block, or a nether star. You can also get creative added modifiers with the creative lock modifier adder. For example, the creative lock, let's say you want to add a creative modifier to your pickaxe. You just search for pickaxe and then creative tool modifier target lock pickaxe. Alright, so now that we've covered the modifiers, let's go over the weaponry. Alright, so get rid of that. Alright, so here's the order on screen right now. There is a list of the best materials to use when creating a weapon. The material list that I use goes from what I have available at the time. It goes iron, alumite, steel, cobalt, millennium, sanguinite, and tartarite. That is the tier progression that I go through with my tools. There are other things in between, but that's just based off of your durability. Look at it when you have extra tick installed. Just look at like hover over the thing and it'll say mining level iron. Just look for something that is better than your current tool and has better mining speed and durability if you care about that. I personally don't care too much about mining speed because redstone takes care of any mining speed problems. Alright, so to make your tools, you go to a tool forge or a tool station. Tool forge will allow you to create all the tools. And let's just start off by building ourselves a pickaxe. So steel head, steel tool rod, and steel binding. Alright, so this is a full steel tool. I would never recommend that you make a tool completely out of the same material. For example, we could replace the binding with paper binding. And that will do nothing to its durability, mining speed, or mining level, but will increase our modifiers by 1. Now, if you have Thaumcraft installed, I would suggest using a Thaumium tool rod instead of a normal tool rod because it has the same modifier as steel and iron for its tool rod, but adds an additional modifier. So this steel pickaxe right here now has 5 modifiers and the same mining level, same durability, and same mining speed. So that's pretty nifty. Let's keep that for later, just in case we want to show how you put the enchantments on. Next up, we will do the weaponry. Weaponry follows the same progression for me, although it is abbreviated. It goes iron, alumite, steel, and stops at steel. I will show you why. Let's look at cleavers, because they have the highest damage. So let's... iron cleaver. An iron cleaver has 11 base damage. Not bad. Steel cleaver has 14 base damage. Much better. Alumite cleaver has a base damage of 11, same as iron, but it has the reinforced 2 perk instead of reinforced 1, which gives it more total durability or effective durability. Next we have steel cleaver, which has 14, and then cobalt cleaver, which has 11, so downgrade from steel, so don't go there. Manilium cleaver has a base damage of 14, so same as steel, so not worth making. And tartarite cleaver has the base damage of 14. So what we've learned from this is that you only gain increased durability for switching to manilium or tartarite with your tools. They don't actually gain any additional damage. So for tools, for weapons, let's go with a broadsword because that is a basic tool. I go with a Thaumium tool rod for the given reason that it has the same modifier, but adds an additional handle modifier for the dual durability, but adds another durability. I use a paper guard because guards do not affect the total durability of a weapon. And then I will use a steel sword blade. This will create a Thaumic writable steel sword, which will give me 8 damage, which is pretty darn good. Just to show that 8 is the highest that you can get, let's look for manilium 8 and tartarite 9. Okay, so tartarite will get 1 damage higher on broadswords. Let's see if that holds true for long swords. 9 damage. And where is there? 8. So long swords and broadswords, and probably cutlasses as well, since cutlasses are just broadswords with a full guard equipped. One thing to know about the cutlass is the full guard actually does make a difference with the cutlass. So let's add a Syracuse cutlass, and you'll see that the durability changes because cutlasses are the weird one where the binding actually makes a difference in the total durability. But let us make ourselves this Thaumic steel sword because it is pretty darn good. Next up we have the hammers. Hammers are useful because they mine in a 3x3 area and are pretty darn nifty that way. Alright, so the way that I would do it is do a Thaumic tough rod because, again, the modifier, steel hammerhead, and then steel plates. This will give you the most durability, but let's say we don't care about durability too much, so let's grab ourselves some paper tough plates, or paper large plates. We have four modifiers now in 8,700 durability. Let's switch that to 1. Our durability dropped about 2,800, and our mining speed dropped a little bit, but we gained an additional modifier. We can add another one there, and our durability will drop again, this time 2,800 approximately, and our mining speed will drop again, this time quite substantially, an entire point, but we'll gain an additional modifier. So it's up to you whether you want to use 2 large plates of paper or just 1 and then the steel. Now the steel plate doesn't have to be the same. You can use any sort of plate, like say you wanted to use a manilium plate because it will give more durability and mining, but less mining speed. So that's just something that you can decide on yourself. Because you already get the reinforced 2 trait from the steel hammerhead, you don't need to look for any reinforced traits since you will already be getting the maximum that you can have by default on a weapon. So let's just go with the steel plate. Actually, let's go with the steel plate because that is better than having the extra thing. So that, like we have seen, has 5 modifiers. We could have done 6, but 5 is good enough. Let's store these right now for over there. So we've already looked at the cleavers, but here's how I would build my cleaver, because I like doing this. You do thaumium right there, paper right there, steel right there, and then grab paper tough rod, because here's the thing about the this second rod right there. It doesn't decrease the durability too much, and it's a weapon, so again it's not going to have crazy high durability or needs to have crazy high durability. You can also switch out the paper plate for a steel plate to gain a heart and a half worth of damage and some durability, so not bad there. You can also switch out for a manilium to gain more damage. Let's see if a tartarite plate would increase the damage at all. Nope, just increases the durability. So these plate will only have a maximum effect up to the blade of a cleaver, as just illustrated. So let's grab this guy and store him for later, because having a 6 modifier by default weapon is pretty darn nice, because you can add beheading, more sharpness, which is better than the heart and a half of damage that you lost by going with an extra modifier, or fiery and looting, that sort of thing. Alright, so let's switch to the ranged weapons. Now the ranged weapons are a bit different. We're starting off with the crossbows here. Crossbows, if you have extra tick installed, will you can mouse over the pieces and it'll tell you what the arrow speed and the draw speed are. Things to note about ranged weaponry in Tinker's Construct. Damage is based off of 3 factors. The material that is the bolt or arrow used, how many levels of sharpness it has on it. Additionally, the weight and the arrow speed, the arrow speed will play a factor into its damage. Faster arrow speed means more damage, and a heavier arrow or bolt will allow you to pierce through more armor. Alright, so steel will always have the highest arrow speed, regardless, but it also has an unreasonable draw speed of 3 seconds. I personally don't like that. The bronze will offer slightly better draw speed for less arrow speed. Cobalt is better than bronze if you have access to a lot of cobalt. The same draw speed, higher arrow speed. But let's not worry about that stuff for right now. The iron, just don't use it. It's bad. Well, not as bad as, say, other materials, but 2.7 for 5.2 when you can go with bronze, which is 2.25 for 5.1. Why add half a second of draw speed for 0.1 arrow speed? Now there are the slime crossbow limbs as well. I personally prefer the blue slime crossbow because it has higher durability, lower draw speed for only a slightly less arrow speed. Then you also have the thaumium crossbow, which has the same stats as don't remember what it has the same stats as, but there's its stats right there. 4.75 draw speed, arrow speed, and a draw speed of 1.75. Now, as I've been hinting at, I have a preferred setup for crossbows, and it is this setup. Tough paper binding, because bindings don't affect durability. A thaumium crossbow body, because that adds another another modifier. And I like the look of the crossbow body of thaumium more than I like the crossbow body of slime. And I think this way looks better. The stats are the exact same for each piece, so it doesn't matter. It's just a matter of preference which way you want to look at it. And then you have the bowstring. I use the fiery bowstring because it gives the most arrow speed, but it also increases the draw speed. The enchanted bowstring would decrease arrow speed and draw speed, but give you an extra modifier. So if you're wanting an extra modifier, an enchanted bowstring is the way to go. And there's the normal bowstring, which will just keep everything equal. As I said, I prefer the fiery bowstring, which is acquired through the fiery string, which is dropped by spiders in the Nether, which is a part of Natura, I believe. So let's grab this crossbow because it's pretty darn good. Next up, we have the short bow and the long bow. Let's start off with the short bow. The short bow is just 2 bow limbs and a bowstring. Again, we're just going to use the fiery bowstring because that's what I like. And the bow limbs are very similar to the crossbow in that steel will be the best for arrow speed, but slime and thaumium are pretty darn good for other things. So thaumium and a slime will get you a reasonable bow with a 5.25 arrow speed and a draw speed of 1.35. Now you could go with a paper bow. Nope, that's not bow limb. Paper bow limb. There it is, right there. But your arrow speed drops significantly as well as your durability. So I like to go with slime, blue slime, thaumium, and a fiery bowstring because short bows don't need many modifiers. Let's grab that for later. Next up, we have the longbow, which all that does is add a plate to the middle that has 0 effect on the arrow speed. See? No effect on arrow speed. So the plate right here, you can do something like slime to add a bunch of durability, or you can add steel. Where is the steel plate? Or a cobalt. plate. Unfortunately, the cobalt only gets plus 50 durability, so let's just go with the steel plate because it's slightly easier to build and acquire. So that will give your bow the reinforced 2 perk. So that's a pretty good longbow right there. Throw that in there. Alright, so that is the bows. Let's grab all this stuff out and load up this. So this is how you make bolts and arrows. Arrows require sticks or wooden tool rods, but sticks and wooden tool rods are the exact same. So pulling up here, you have to put a stick in the center because it will only accept wooden tool rods or sticks. I've mentioned that a few times now. Next up, you put an arrowhead of your choice. I like using thaumium because it gives you an extra modifier and has decent damage. Steel will do more damage and weighs a little bit more, or twice as much. You can use quicksilver if you want to have a really heavy arrow, or you can use tartarite if you want to have an extremely heavy arrow, or you can use an alumite arrow, which is lighter than thaumium, or an iron, which is heavier than thaumium. But I prefer thaumium because that allows you to add an extra modifier. Now for the fletching, you have slime fletching, which is just bad. It gives you less durability for slightly better than normal accuracy, so don't ever use slime fletching. The default fletching is feather, which isn't bad. If you want to go for more ammo, you go with leaf, but it greatly decreases your accuracy. I personally prefer the slime leaf fletching, which is gained from the slime leaf trees on the slime floating islands. So, because it has better than normal accuracy and better than normal durability. So let's grab ourselves some thaumium arrows. And we'll just make ourselves some steel arrows as well, just because. Alright, so next up we have the crossbow bolts. But oh wait, we need bolt cores. How do you make a bolt core? Bolt cores are very simple to make. You just go over to the smeltery and put down a tool rod of your choice. I believe most tool rods will work. I personally prefer paper. And then you put in ingots of a certain type. So let's just add, I have all these made already, so I'll just demonstrate with a steel one. So here's iron bolts with paper, iron, paper core, iron core, steel core, and cobalt core. Steel core is the heaviest, while an iron is a close second. And then there's the various tips over here. Like these are iron tipped, which have 1 attack. These are manilium tipped, which have 2 attack, and these are cobalt, which have 1.5. But one thing to note about these attacks is they are completely meaningless. You only care about what the slime crossbow says, or the crossbow says. Since we don't have any bolts in our inventory right now, it's not saying anything. But when we put our these iron writable bolts in there, we see that we have an attack damage of 7 hearts. Not bad. And that remains the same regardless of what core is used, because it is based off of the iron tip. Crossbow damage is based off of the tip, not about the core that was used or the tool rod that was used. The tool rod that was used only adds weight, which will help with armor piercing. So cobalt has 10.5 hearts, not bad. Manilium has 14 damage, but steel is where it's at once again for the tips, because it has 14 hearts and is far more accessible and easy to get than manilium is, in my opinion. The only benefit to using steel bolts over manilium bolts over steel bolts is that you will have a higher ammo count as opposed to steel. So let's grab that. Let's just illustrate the bolt creation real quick. So we have our paper writable steel-tipped bolt with a break chance of 1000%. That is a little sad. So there it is. It now has a break chance of 70% approximately. Now to compare this, the manilium writable bolts have an ammo count of 51, whereas the steel bolts only have a count of 32. Now to get on the modifiers for the steel bolts. Now, the steel bolts get pretty ridiculous pretty quickly when you add in modifiers. So let's get rid of that, get rid of those for the time being. Now we just grab quartz, grab some quartz blocks, take back that, take back those, and take back the longbow and the short bow. Alright, now to illustrate the bow's damage. So the bow, it does 5 hearts, 7 hearts, 5 hearts, 7 hearts, 10 hearts, 15 hearts. So the heart damage on the arrows is actually a modifier. By default, this bow will do 5 hearts. When we add a 1 heart arrow, it still does 5. But when we go to a 2 heart, it jumps up to 10. So the attack heart modifier on the arrows is a multiplier for the bow's base damage, which is an easy way to gauge your bow's damage. So let's put those back in there. Actually, let's keep them and go with the steel arrows, since that is more likely what you would make as opposed to thaumium. Alright, so the slime crossbow is right there, and then where did our steel writable bolts go? Where did they go? Ah, there they are. Steel writable bolts. Alright, so when we go over to here, I already have some quartz installed. It was 14 hearts with no quartz. When you add 16 quartz, you increase the damage to 18. So you're gaining 4 hearts per 16 quartz. Let's just max out the quartz on this bolt to illustrate a point. When you have used all 3 modifiers of on quartz, which is 144, your damage jumps up to 39.5 hearts. That is nearly 80 damage, just straight. That's pretty darn good, considering it's a ranged weapon. And I've also added a bunch of redstone to this crossbow, 5 modifier levels, which is by default what this crossbow would have, and it lowers its draw speed to 0.35 from its base of 2.1. So that's pretty darn good in and of itself. Now, let's grab ourselves a target locked thing for modifiers. Get rid of that. Now let's just say that these are the notch apple, diamond, and gold and diamond upgrade slots that I'm just adding onto there, but I'm just being lazy and using the target locked creative modifier. The nifty thing about the ammo from Tinker's Construct is if you add moss, ball of moss to it, there's 2 levels of auto repair. Why would you add auto repair onto bolts, you say? Well, the answer is simple. When we switch to survival, we just shot down to 26 bolts. Let's just watch the counter right there. Set it to noon. Maybe that'll help. It's supposed to regenerate ammo. Oh, there it went. Regenerated 1 bolt. So that's pretty nifty. You start getting quite a bit regen speed at auto repair 3. It's quite slow at 1, bit faster at 2, but you actually start noticing it at auto repair 3. the same applies for the arrows. Now let's do some target practice real quick. Go back to this handy dandy archer thing, well, Stonehenge over here, and let's aim at that wall right there. I know from experience that I have to aim a little bit higher. It dropped about 1.5 blocks from this distance with these bolts. A heavier bolt, for example, let's just look for bolt. Let's grab ourselves some crazy heavy bolt. I know there's heavier. 17 is pretty darn heavy. Put that up there. 39.5. There we go, 7 hearts. So it is now using these bolts right there with a it's 17 weight. When I'm aiming at the exact same spot, you'll notice that, holy cow, the bolts are landing right there. So heavier bolts will fly much smaller distances as opposed to lighter bolts. Same goes for arrows. So let's collect this bolt right there so we can run back over here and demonstrate the short bow and long bow. So here's the short bow. It is fully drawn back. Aim right about there. And it hit on the ground because we are using some pretty heavy arrows. Let's switch to the long bow. Aim down. Right about there is where I was aimed previously. And the long bow, I have no idea where that went. Shooting up and to the right. And then down and to the right. That is because, even though this is 94% accurate, it will still shoot all over the place. Essentially what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that the short bow will shoot much smaller distances as opposed to the long bow, as you would expect, since a short bow has less draw power than a long bow does in real life. So the long bow will give you more armor pen and distance for each shot, but will generally double the draw speed for per shot. You can decrease that by adding redstone, so you can get a pretty fast shooting longbow if you add a bunch of redstone, or like I showed with the crossbow, decrease the draw speed from 2 seconds to 0.35. So we could do approximately the same with this Thaumium longbow. So that's about it for Tinker's Construct and the weapons and modifiers. To reiterate once again, my preferred choice of metal for tools is a iron or alumite, then steel, then cobalt, then manilium, then tartarite. But most of the time I will just end up using a steel blade or whatnot, as shown right here, steel cleaver. I generally use paper plates to add extra modifiers, or and if possible, if you have Thaumcraft installed, always have a Thaumium tool blade or something in the tool, because that will give you a free modifier, especially if it's used in a tool rod position. Now, as for the modifiers that go into the weapons, I prefer quartz and lapis in all my weapons. You can't put lapis on bolts, and putting lapis on the bow does nothing. So ranged weaponry, you just add on a ton of quartz and some auto repair for the regen. For melee weapons, you do maxed out lapis, which is 450 lapis, which will give you looting 3, and then I add quartz, and if it's a cleaver, and I want to make, say, a beheading cleaver, I just make like a steel cleaver, like this one over here, Thaumcraft Thaumium tough rod, Thaumium tough rod, paper tough large plate, and a steel blade, because I'm going for the maximum amount of modifiers. Then I would add only beheading enchantments to it for a 100% beheading chance, because cleavers by default have 20% chance, and adding 2 more modifiers onto this cleaver right here would allow you to put 8 beheadings on, which would take your beheading chance up to 100%, because each level of beheading adds 10% beheading. So that should cover most of the Tinker's Construct weaponries, what I prefer for melee weapons, what I prefer for ranged weapons for their parts, and what I prefer to put on for the modifications, and what each modification does. I hope this was helpful to you in some small way, and that you will tune in for the next episode. Until then, bye-bye now.